Hi, welcome back to Della Dars, welcome back to another video. So today we're going to talk about my experience with graduating from CSM. It was a very strange one, to say the least. Yeah, let's get into the video. So if you watched the previous video to this one, where I talked about the things that have changed since I've been back on YouTube, so you would know that I graduated during the pandemic, which was a very, very, very tough time. Not just because of the pandemic and everything that was going on that was related solely to the pandemic, but also other factors to do with my idea of what graduating was meant to be like, my expectation versus the reality of what it really was, but also the understanding of what was happening during that time in regards to racial injustice and the uproar of all of that from what had happened with George Floyd and his death. In hindsight now, I can put language to it, but back then I was not in a good place to understand what was happening with me, and therefore I couldn't understand what my emotions were at that time, if that makes sense. Anyway, now I have language, I can talk about it. So before graduating, my expectation was that I was going to end the year, end the academic year with a bang. So I was going to finish with a first, which didn't actually happen, but I was going to finish with a first and I was going to finish hard. That was my main thing. My main goal was, regardless of everything that had happened throughout the 4 years of me being in uni, so my 3 years and then year of placement, whether I achieved the goals or didn't achieve the goals that I wanted to achieve in every year, the third year or the final year would be the year where I leave with a bang. Not because of the grade, but because I wanted to achieve that. It was something that I wanted to achieve for myself, but also in my mind I was doing it for my mum as well. So when the pandemic hit, it changed everything, because obviously I'm doing textile design. We are in the print room majority of the time, creating our prints to do and to complete our final project. Now that we're in lockdown, there is no way for us to enter into the print rooms. We cannot produce the things that we want to produce in the different workshops because we don't have access to the workshops, which means that we had to alter everything that we wanted to do and all the ideas that we had for our project. What was kind of okay for me was the idea that I could pivot to some degree with my project. So my project now became digital. Everyone's project became digital, but I ended up making it into a digital magazine. I'd never done that before. In our course, we had never learnt about InDesign or any of the Adobe programs that would help specifically for graphics. We had done things to do with print and repeating prints on Photoshop, but not the other Adobe programs, which meant that there was a lot of me going on to Skillshare, trying to understand what I'm actually trying to achieve. Anyway, long story short, that was difficult in itself because for so long in my mind, I had imagined what my final year project would look like, and I had put so much research into what I wanted to create. But then having to face the pandemic and that pivot, in a short space of time, I had to change something that I had been working on for months, which was hard. And it also needed me to really change my mindset really quickly, because when the pandemic hit as well, I just felt very deflated. I didn't feel motivated to do my work, and I didn't feel like I had the right tools in order to do it. So I had to change my mindset and just look at what I had and just used what I had to help me create what I wanted to create, which ended up being cool to a degree. Like, I did enjoy creating the things that I did create with the tools that I had. But what I didn't realise was that when what had happened with George Floyd had happened, that would trigger so many things for me. So throughout my whole university process, if anyone who has been or who has watched my videos in the past or knows my background knows that I was caring for my two younger brothers. So, and that was a result from losing my mum before I came to university. So I had lost my mum, and then I got accepted into CSM, and then went straight into just doing work and just doing life. But then when all of that stuff happened with George Floyd, it triggered all those emotions for me. So all of the things that I guess I just kind of swept under the carpet, or convinced myself that I was okay and I had kind of built a stronger me, and dealt with those situations, they all came back. But I didn't realize at the time that that's what it was. I just realized at the time that I was in a low place. And what that looked like practically was on random days, literally, like it could be any time of the day, I'll just start crying. Like, I remember there was one time we were on Teams to do our uni meetings, and I started crying, and I had to turn off my camera because it was just too much, and I didn't know how to process it because I didn't have the language, and I didn't really understand what was going on. All I knew was that I don't feel like deeply saddened is enough of a word to describe how I felt, but for a lack of words, that's kind of what we're going with what had happened with George Floyd, but also the idea that my mind kept going back to this thought of that could have been my brother, that could have been my dad, that could have been my uncle. That is my blood. Like that's how I felt in that time. And I just couldn't get that image out of my mind. So I was dealing with that, but then at the same time, I was being quite avoidant of that because I kept telling myself, I don't have the time to be emotional about what is happening when I'm faced with having to finish this degree. And hearing it back right now sounds so mad that I had that mentality, but I guess we live and we learn. I was struggling. I was struggling, and it was affecting my work as well, and it was affecting my communication with my tutors, and they kept telling me, and I didn't know how to change that. I didn't know how to be better. I didn't know how to be open about what was going on for me because I couldn't put language to it. But at the same time, my focus was really trying to just finish that year and finish it off hard, but that wasn't even happening anyway because your girl was not there in here anyway. So it was just a vicious cycle. So graduating was a very tough time, a tough period, because I just wasn't mentally prepared for what was happening. And then when it was happening, I don't feel like I had the tools in order for me to really do it well enough. And I think deep down inside I knew, and that was also frustrating me.